Hey, welcome to Live Life Full Out podcast. Your host, Mark McCullough. And today we're going to jump right into something. But if you're watching this on YouTube, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and hit that bell. You'll get notified whenever we release a new episode. And for those of you jumping in on Spotify, I hope you're having a great day. When we think about what's happening in the world today, we've come up on the anniversary of 9/11. Looking back at some of the things that happened to the country, how our way of life during that time period, and as I look back at COVID, it also had some significant influence on how we operated and how we lived. I mean, and still affecting us in many, many ways. But today's topic is, part of it is change. And the other piece of it is probably the most important aspect of what we do, how we do it, why we do it, what's the key to being genuine and authentic, to being humble, hungry, and smart, is this single answer to a 2-word sentence. How you answer it will be word 3 on. And what am I talking about? So let's go back to COVID. And we started hearing, when are things going to get back to normal? When are things going to get back to normal? And in many instances in real estate today, especially from my real estate and my mortgage professional friends, the big question is when do we get back to normal? When in all honesty, what we saw in 2021 and 2% rates, that wasn't normal. And now we're seeing 8% rates and quote unquote, that's not normal either. So when is it going to come down? Is it going to be in the 5s? Is it going to be in the 6? Will we see the 4s? What's the magical number? And I mean, the real honest issue of it is we don't know. But what it indicated to us, and COVID was probably the most extreme example of this, is we had order and then we had disorder and everybody wanted it back to order. And as you look at the Masters of Change and the theories behind this, and there's a great interview Rich Roll does on this, and I'm looking for the author right now, and I can't think of his name. I'll give him credit in a note that we're done. But he starts talking about the homeostasis of people, our desire to get back to to order, disorder, then reorder. And really the study of change comes into is the homeostasis piece of this versus the allostasis of it. And that the difference between the two is we're in a normal state. Let's call normal, quote unquote, normal as what we're familiar with. And that's order. And then change happens and it becomes disorder. Well, in an allostasis, it doesn't go back to order, it goes to reorder. And I think there's a fundamental difference on this that we have to take a look at, and it's a mirror that we have to take a look at first and foremost. So I'm dealing with a lot of people that are in the midst of change, in the midst of a reorder scenario versus order. If we wanted to go back to the way things were, we could go back to our lifestyle, the way we thought, the way we think, the way we operate, and it doesn't cause for a lot of growth. When you get into an allostasis piece of this, where there's order, disorder, and then there's reorder, this is why people will say you're either growing or you're dying. You're either getting left behind or you're keeping pace and keeping up with the changes that are necessary to stay connected to your clients, to your kids in many ways. I mean, we've got 2 teenagers and we're facing this in our own lives. But as you look at this, what is the real key to growth? And is the willing to stretch ourselves outside of the norm. Therefore, it can't be in a state of order. It's a reorder. And as I'm working with people that are in the midst of a change, their industries are 70% lower than what they were before. Competition is stiffer than ever. And others are looking at trying to reinvent the organizations that they're associated with. What does that culture change look like, and what is it going to take, and what is it going to take to change that culture? And what's the leadership look like in the new world versus the old world? And really, when we talk about change and we talk about that disorder piece, let's talk about when Ford mass produced the car. Automobile had been around for a while, but when Ford mass produced it, car in everybody's home, whatever you wanted to look at that, the everyman, everyday person's car, there was no going back to the horse and buggy. I mean, today, in the evolution of the electric vehicle and the Teslas, and what we're looking at is we're not going back to the buggy, horse and buggy anytime soon. I mean, there's been a transformational change. And when there's just a structural change, there's a movement piece. It's a compliance component of that, but it's more of a logical change. When you get into a transformational change, now you have to engage people's hearts, their minds, their soul, their psyche, their buy-in, their willingness, the buy-in and the support of things. And all of that comes down to leadership. Everything rises and falls because of leadership. And when we look at this piece, it becomes very evident to me that we have to step back, or I have to step back for myself as a leader. My clients have to step back as themselves as well and ask themselves this question. And how we answer this question will determine how we lead, how we succeed, how we fail, how we stay stuck, how we stay resistant, how much we are being able to be genuine and authentic with people. And a lot of people, I found this interesting the other day, and I'm going to dovetail off here, but when people talk about, well, they're just so transparent and authentic, that doesn't give you permission to be rude and a complete and total jerk. I mean, that's not being authentic and genuine. I mean, it might be genuinely you, but it also makes you a jerk. What I'm talking about is, how do you be genuine in who you are in your vulnerability of who you are being in the pursuit of being something else? The leader of today won't be able to keep pace with the leader of tomorrow. So as a leadership person, and everybody listening to this and hearing this is a leader in one way, shape, form, or another. Leadership is influence, nothing less, nothing more, as John Maxwell has said. And as we take a look at that component, here's the question. If you're going to lead a team, if you're going to lead an organization, if you're going to lead a company, if you're going to lead your family, how you answer this question will be the most important question that you answer perhaps in your life. And you'll have to re-answer it generationally for one, but more importantly, you probably will have to answer it multiple times in different seasons of your life based upon the conditions and the circumstances to remind yourself of the answer to this question. So get out a piece of paper and a pen and answer this question. I am. And fill in the blank. Then write the question again. I am. Fill in the blank. And for most people, if I give them an exercise of complete that sentence as many times as you can in the next 30 seconds, go. And sometimes I'll give them 60 seconds. On average, people will complete it 6 or 8 times. If I give them another way to answer the question in a different perspective, a different set of glasses, a different lens to look through to answer the question, like if I lined up your mom, your dad, your best friends, the people that love and admire you the most, and I asked them the questions of Mark is, and had them define it, and they answer it through the lens of their best friends and their loved ones answering the question, they'll come up with 20 things. You know, as Eric Hoffer would say, we think well of ourselves only in rare moments and rare times. So as the leaders of today, especially our leaders that are my age, that are getting a lot of gray in the hair, they're in their 50s and their 60s, and they're trying to figure out what's next. Or you've had a merger and an acquisition in an organization, and you're trying to figure out how do you honor the the golden age as it returns and a new age begins. It's a this and that formula, not a this or formula. It's a this and that formula. So how do you answer the question, I am? And I'm going to really challenge you to sit down with a piece of paper and do this. And if you will take your time and do this every day for the next 30 days, especially if you're a leader of an organization going through change, you've got to be comfortable in your own skin and knowing who you are and whose you are. And if you're not able to rattle off 50 or 100 of these answers to the question, I am, and know it, not logically think it, but feel it in your heart that this is true, we got some work to do. So if you're not immediately going in, I am smart, I am strong, I am handsome, I am beautiful, I am passionate, I am courageous, I'm inspired, I'm inspiring, I'm forgiven, I'm forgiving, I'm more than enough, I'm intelligent, I'm motivated, I'm disciplined, I'm focused. If you can't start rattling these things off, whenever I ask the leaders of any organization that's trying to set a new or take a pivot or make a movement to something new, and I ask them what their values are. What's your organizational values? Are they aspirational or are they core values? And the core values already exist. And I come back to the leaders that I need to know your values without you even telling me. I mean, if I take you into a restaurant or I take you into a supermarket, I used to do this a little bit, especially back in the logistics days, and we were dealing with some contracts with high tech that they couldn't do any wrong back in the day. I mean, you if you were a complete and totally incompetent fool, you still made millions of money and millions of dollars, lots of money. I'd take them and we'd go to a grocery store and I'd go to the deli. Hey, want to go to lunch? Yeah. Well, we didn't go to the 5-star restaurant. We didn't go to a 3-star restaurant. We went to a restaurant or went to the deli at a grocery store and take them to the counter, order a sandwich. And all I was looking for was how did they treat the people from the minute we were in the parking lot to how we walked through the door, walked through the produce section into the meat aisle, how they greeted the person behind the counter, how they accepted the sandwich. And then as we started to go through checkout aisles, if the skies opened and the Lord looked down on me with a ray of sunshine, there would be somebody that took out their pen and their checkbook with a long line. And I mean, we got 2 items that we're trying to check out, a soda and a sandwich and maybe a bag of chips. They'd start to write a check. And I use this because this was something I had to ask myself about. I'd lose my mind. I mean, my patience is not long. I did not get a lot of patience dished out whenever that line was in the creation mode. I missed it, or I got the leftovers of the bucket and moved on before they replenished it. But if I can watch them lose their mind in there, now I know what to start asking about. What does that really look like? What does that mean? How does that show up at home? How does that show up at work? And then I'll ask them, I need to take a tour of your building, and I want to meet with everybody in every department, not as a group, not as a formal meeting, but I just need your directory, and I'd love to meet some of the newest people, some of your most tenured people, and as I'm going, just let them know that somebody may stop by and say hi to them, and to take some time, and it's okay to take time out of their day to have a chat. And I just ask them, when's the last time you were asked about your opinion about something here? When's the last time you received praise for what you do? When change happens, how's that communication come to you? How do you find out about it? So all I'm trying to do is validate on the front line that the messages and the goals and things that are going on at the CEO and the visionary levels are trickling down to the front line in the fashion that they want them to be. And if they're not, we have to start to unpack what the communication looks like, what it sounds like, the frequency of it, and more importantly, who's doing it and how much of it's happening in groups versus email only, and how much one-on-one time do we have. But it circles back around to, from a leader's standpoint, the pursuit of success versus significance. The answer to that question, I am, will give you about all the indicators you need to know of the life that you've been living up until now. And then it's the pivot. This isn't going back to an order state. This is going to a reorder state. The new you, the new becoming. And I'll be talking about the be versus have conversation in the next episode next week. But if you haven't taken time to ever answer this question, I am, and just read your answers. And if you can't answer it, the blank page should be a bigger concern for you than the negative things that you have written down. Because the negative things that you have written down, you can cross them out and write the opposite of it. And up until now, that may have been true. I am not patient. Well, I don't know that I'd be described as somebody overly patient, but I am curious and I am looking for understanding, and that takes longer than somebody that goes after judgment. I'm judgmental. And that was one of mine as well, that I had to say, okay, well, man, how do I not be so judgmental? I mean, it's part of who I am and how I was brought up. You had to be able to come to a decision and judge somebody relatively quick. Not only from just a life perspective, but in business, how are we going to approach things? How weren't we going to approach things? If I was going to sell something, not sell something, you get the point. But we are going through a monumental change politically, circumstances, conditions, monetarily, in the financial industries. All of those things are going through. The stock market's going through change. The labor market's going through change. The cost from an inflationary standpoint, all of these things are changing. And we have to ask ourselves again, what matters most? Who am I and whose am I? Great questions, great definitive pieces that if you don't take the time to reevaluate and answer the question, I am, how do you or I think that I'm ever going to be able to lead, or you're going to ever be able to lead our children the way we want them to grow? As a couple, my wife and I, how will we ever walk in the way and the path that we want to go? More or less influence an industry that sustains the challenges that's going on, to do the things necessary to increase new habits, to change and give up old habits that are no longer serving us, for new habits that allow us to have a healthier mind, body, spirit, and live a more quality and optimal life. But it all starts with the answer to the question, I am. Change is inevitable. We are not going to get away from it. We often think that, it's going to be something that we can get in, we can get out. It's something that happens to us. And the truth of it is, we're always in conversation with change. That part is never going to go away. And I know it's been said, and I've said it, and I've heard it and said, yeah. But I mean, it's true. It's true now more than ever. Change isn't what is happening to us. It's the conversation that we're having with it and the narrative that we're telling ourselves about it. And if we're an early adopter, fantastic. If we're a late adopter, that's fine. Or if we're a resistor and we're not going to, there's some problems. But we're not going to escape it. So you might as well get real serious, real quick, real fast, real empowering on the truth of the statement, I am, and then breathe life into the areas that you need to become so that they can be answered, I am, genuinely, authentically, and my actions speak for myself, that I don't have to tell you what that is, you know for yourself. Hope this finds you well. God bless. We'll talk next week.